Today's source material is a highly energetic stream of consciousness reaction script documenting a creator's real-time, detailed response to a former colleague's dramatic exit from the internet. So a key theme running through this material seems to be the juxtaposition between the speaker's chaotic physical environment and the reading of a deeply serious online post.
Yeah, that contrast is, it's definitely the driving force right out of the gate.
Right, like dodging security at VidCon or, riding the Thunder Mountain roller coaster while simultaneously reacting to this massive piece of internet drama. To me, reading this is like trying to watch an intense psychological thriller, but someone in the theater keeps intermittently turning the house lights on and off to hand out fruit snack.
That is such a good analogy. It's exactly what it feels like.
Isn't it? So how do we smooth out this narrative friction without losing that fun setting? Because we need to figure that out.
Well, integrating the physical setting of a reaction can heighten audience engagement, but erratic transitions disrupt the narrative momentum. That's the core issue.
Yeah, it definitely trips itself up.
Exactly. The main weakness is that rapid, uncontrolled toggling between reading the antagonist's melodramatic text and then, out of nowhere, the speaker's mundane physical interjection.
Look, the morning cleaners.
Right. Or waiting for a Spotify happy hour. Or talking about eating an untouched plate of fruit and veg. It dilutes the emotional weight and the clarity of the core rebuttal because it forces the audience to just, constantly reset their focus.
I felt genuine emotional whiplash reading it. I mean it. You're following along, getting deeply invested in the interpersonal stakes of this drama, and suddenly the focus violently snaps back to the present reality of an 8 a.m. recording session.
And that cognitive penalty is what undermines the material.
It forces the reader to reboot their brain's context processing every other paragraph.
Yeah, so my suggestion here is to anchor the reaction firmly in specific, cohesive physical scenes before moving to the next thematic. Let the physical environment serve as a framing device rather than an interrupter.
Okay, but how do we actually execute that on the page? Give me some concrete examples. My fear is that if we strictly separate the environmental color from the reaction, it's going to read like two completely different scripts awkwardly spliced together.
Not necessarily. One way to do this is to group all the VidCon security anecdotes, the Try Guys mentions, and the Thunder Mountain countdown as a comedic prologue.
Oh, interesting. Like an intro block?
Exactly. You use that prologue to firmly establish this unbothered physical reality before you ever crack open the antagonist's text.
I actually really like that approach because it builds a fortress of context. Once you establish that prologue, the audience intuitively understands the vibe. Then, when you dive into the heavy analysis, you don't need to keep reminding them about the roller coaster.
Right. The vibe permeates the text implicitly. And alternatively, if the creator really wants to weave those physical interruptions throughout, they should only use them at natural paragraph breaks in the antagonist's text.
Like treating them as intentional theatrical pauses?
Yes. Exactly. Rather than mid-sentence distraction, it gives the audience a moment to breathe.
That makes total sense. The environment should be a lens, not a commercial break. You want to look through the setting, not pause the analysis to look at the setting.
That is the perfect distinction. You control the pace rather than letting the chaos dictate the flow.
Well, that constant shifting of the physical setting leads directly to a shifting emotional tone, too. The material makes a strong case for highlighting the absurdity of the antagonist's claims, but the speaker repeatedly says things like, "I don't give a shit," and "this is a one-and-done read."
While writing a novel about it.
Exactly. I'm not reading this right now, while simultaneously delivering a massive, hyper-detailed, line-by-line emotional analysis. Isn't there a huge friction there?
Absolutely. A compelling critique relies on aligning the presenter's emotional tone with their stated level of investment in the subject.
So the feigned apathy is the weakness?
Yes, a massive weakness. The script repeatedly asserts a complete lack of care and a desire to ignore the subject, yet it dedicates just a huge amount of highly charged, specific attention to dissecting every single sentence.
It creates a wildly dissonant viewing experience.
It does. Feigning apathy while clearly demonstrating intense obsession undermines the presenter's credibility. It makes the narrator feel unreliable. As a reader, if you're telling me you don't care, but you've written a master's thesis proving that you do care, I naturally start to question everything else you're telling.
I totally get that. But I also understand the instinct, It's a defense mechanism. There's this overwhelming pressure to be the cool girl of the internet, to effortlessly destroy your opponent while sipping iced coffee and acting like you barely care they exist.
Right, the performative coolness.
Yeah, if this creator admits they spent 14 hours seething over a Google Doc, aren't they just handing the antagonist a win?
I get that fear, but the audience sees right through performative app. They know you care or you wouldn't be recording a reaction. dissection. So the suggestion here is to calibrate the vocal performance and script framing to lean fully into the passionate, analytical dissection. Stop pretending to be indifferent and just embrace the investment.
Okay, but how do we rewrite those defensive moments without making the creator sound overly sensitive? Like, concretely, what do they say?
Well, instead of saying, "I truly have not even read this yet, this does not deserve me reading it twice," the speaker could pivot to something else.
Like what?
Like, "I fully intended to ignore this, but the contradictions here are just too glaring to pass up, so let's break it down."
Oh, wow. That completely flips the dynamic.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. It acknowledges the initial desire to walk away, keeping that cool posture, but uses the antagonist's own words as the catalyst. It gives the creator permission to care.
Exactly. And another concrete adjustment is to drop the repetitious "I don't care" motif entirely. Just cut it.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah, and instead lean into a tone of righteous, hyper-focused dismantling. Acknowledge to the audience that this drama is compelling to unpack. Frame it as correcting the historical record.
That transforms the narrator from someone who seems reactive into someone who is authoritative. Apathy is the enemy of authority. You can't perform an autopsy if you're pretending not to care about the body on the table.
You have to own the scalpel.
I love that. Own the scalpel. But once we align that emotional intent and stop pretending we don't care, we can look closely at what is actually being analyzed. Let's look closely at the section discussing the client named Gavin.
Of the Gavin situation, yeah.
It feels like the absolute strongest, most concrete part of the whole piece, involving actual professional stakes. Jobs, a 90-10 contract split, AI thumbnails, ignored emails.
Real tangible damage.
Right, but it's buried at the very end. It's almost like a prosecutor hiding their absolute best piece of forensic evidence in the final seconds of their closing argument, rather than making it the foundation of the case.
It really is. Prioritizing substantive, high-stakes arguments over interpersonal grievances elevates the overall authority of the material.
So burying the lead is the weakness.
Totally. The strongest, most objectively provable argument that the subject was fired for neglecting professional managerial duties to Gavin is completely buried beneath subjective, personal insults.
We spent the first 2/3 of the material wading through these granular debates over who tapped whose shoulder at VidCon, or mocking the desire for a private life.
Right, and by hiding the real-world consequences, the script reads more like a petty squabble than a justified takedown. It diminishes the whole piece.
I hear what you're saying, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't that petty gossip exactly what this specific audience clicks for? If we front-load a dry contract dispute about a 90-10 split, do we risk boring them?
Not if you frame it correctly. Professional misconduct is the good stuff when it's presented as a betrayal of trust. My suggestion is to elevate the professional misconduct allegations to the absolute center of the narrative, using them as the definitive lens through which all of the subject's other claims are viewed and debunked.
So how do we structurally reorganize the text to achieve that? Give me a concrete example of how to make that 90-10 split sound compelling early on.
Sure, when the antagonist's text reads, "Losing my job was painful," immediately pause the reading to juxtapose it with the hard facts.
Interject right there.
Exactly. You explicitly say, "You lost your job because you gave a client a 90-10 split, ignored their emails, and supplied AI slop."
That is incredibly satisfying as a reader. It instantly deflates the melodrama.
Right? And another structural adjustment is to aggressively cut down the lengthy debate about the documentary involvement or who touched the fruit plate. Dedicate that recovered time to clearly outlining the timeline of the subject's professional failure with Gavin.
Bring it right to the front.
Yes, put it near the beginning to permanently anchor the speaker on the moral high ground.
I love that. Never lead with your feelings when you can lead with their failures. That changes how the audience reads the rest of the antagonist's words entirely.
It colors the entire rest of the text in your favor. It transforms the genre from a subjective gossip reaction into an investigative accountability piece.
That makes so much sense. Well, to briefly recap our 3 main takeaways for today. First, we need to smooth out the narrative transitions between physical actions and text analysis. Let the physical environment serve as a framing device, not a distraction.
Make it cohesive, yeah.
Second, align the script's tone to embrace the speaker's true level of investment. Stop pretending you don't care and lean into that passionate, analytical dissection.
Own the scalpel.
own the scalpel. And third, front load the highest stakes professional arguments like the Gavin situation to establish unshakable authority right from the start.
Those 3 changes will completely elevate this draft.
Absolutely. We want to thank the listener for submitting such a raw, passionate, and highly detailed piece. We explicitly invite you to apply these structural and tonal edits and submit your revised work back into the show for further critique. We would really love to see how it evolves.
Definitely. Send it back our way.
Thanks for listening to this critique, and we'll catch you on the next one.